All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about a piece of project management that is absolutely critical, but, often gets overlooked. We're talking about the connections, the interfaces that really hold the whole thing together. We're going to lay out a super clear, actionable way to get these connections right and avoid the classic mistakes that can totally sink a project.
So let me ask you something. When you're thinking about all the things that could go wrong on a big project, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it the budget? Maybe some technical glitch? Well, what if I told you the biggest risk is actually hiding in plain sight? The answer is it's the gaps. It's all those unmanaged handoffs, the undocumented connections, the places where one team's work meets another's. This is where communication just falls apart, where rework starts to pile up, and where your cost and your schedule can go completely off the rails.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the real cost of getting this wrong. Then, we're going to get clear on what these interfaces actually are. We'll look at the anatomy of a solid agreement, cover the essential tools you need, and finally, wrap it all up with how to achieve total control.
Okay, so let's dig into the problem first. Just how bad can it be when these connections aren't managed properly? It really comes down to a pretty simple but scary formula. The more complex your project gets, more teams, more contractors, more systems, the more of these interfaces you have. And every single one that isn't actively managed is a ticking time bomb. The risk just grows exponentially. Think about it. One team delivers a giant turbine, but the foundation that another team poured is off by just a couple of inches. Why? Because the final drawing wasn't formally sent and signed off on. That's a classic interface failure, and that little gap can cost millions and delay you by months.
So, to even begin to solve this, we have to create a common language. We need to get everyone on the same page by clearly identifying and defining what it is we're trying to manage.
So what's the goal here? Well, according to the Construction Industry Institute, interface management isn't just about making lists. It's a formal, standardized process. And the key word, the magic word, is predictability. It is all about systematically removing surprises from your project. So what do these interfaces actually look like? Well, they basically fall into two main buckets. On one side, you've got hard interfaces. These are the physical, tangible things you can actually touch. A pipe connecting to a pump, a steel beam connecting to a column. Then on the other side, you have soft interfaces. These aren't physical, but they are just as critical. We're talking about the transfer of design data, a key schedule milestone, or even a contractual handoff. We can also slice it another way, by who's involved. Internal interfaces are all the connections inside your project's bubble, say between your own engineering and construction teams. External interfaces are the connections your project has with the outside world. Think regulatory agencies, utility companies, or maybe even another project happening next door. You've got to manage both.
Okay, so we know what they are, but how do you actually document one properly? Let's break down the anatomy of a really solid interface agreement. A real interface document isn't just some sticky note. It is a formal record, and it has to have these key things. Every single one needs a unique ID so you can track it. It needs a revision number so you know everyone's working off the latest info. It's got to be crystal clear about who is the supplier, the one providing the thing, and who is the receiver. And this part is absolutely crucial. It needs signatures, not just to agree on the plan up front, but also to formally sign off and close the loop when the work is actually done. That right there, that creates real accountability.
Now, let's get practical and talk about the actual tools you're going to use to capture all this information and make this framework a reality.
The most fundamental tool is the Interface Agreement Form, or IAF. The easiest way to think about this is like a mini contract for one single connection. It is the one place where two parties formally write down and agree on all the nuts and bolts of one specific interface. And every one of these IFs follows a really simple but really powerful life cycle. First, you describe the details. Then, both sides review it and agree. They sign it to make it official. And finally, once the work is delivered and confirmed, they sign it again to close it out. It's a perfect closed-loop system, which means nothing gets forgotten or left to chance. Now, of course, a big project could have hundreds, maybe even thousands of these IAFs. So how do you track them all? That is where the Interface Data Register, or IDR, comes into play. Just think of it as your master dashboard, a single source of truth for every single interface on the entire project. It logs every IAF, it tracks its status, it gives you a complete real-time picture of your project's health. And let's be absolutely clear about why these tools are so important. It's not just about being organized.
Failing to use this system consistently doesn't just create some confusion, it directly leads to huge delays, especially when you get to the pointy end of the project during delivery and commissioning. And almost always, it leads to expensive rework.
So, we have the documents, we have the master list. The final piece of the puzzle is making sure this system is a living, breathing thing, not just a folder full of paperwork that gathers dust.
And this quote right here, it just nails it. It is not enough to just create all these documents. You have to have what's called a rigorous configuration management mechanism. Now that sounds complicated, but all it really means is you need a formal process to control and manage any changes to these agreements as they happen. Having this living process gives you total transparency. When a design changes, the interface document gets updated and boom, everyone involved is automatically in the loop. This is what stops teams from working with old, outdated information. And it means if a problem does pop up, you can trace it back to a specific decision in a specific document, not just some fuzzy memory of a hallway conversation. It completely replaces the blame game with factual, traceable accountability.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final question to think about. Take a hard look at your own projects. Are those critical connections between your teams, your systems, your contractors? Are they built on a solid foundation of documented, agreed-upon facts? Or are they resting on a whole lot of dangerous, unverified assumptions? The answer to that question could literally be the difference between success and failure.